in a video for Nuts and Bolts in a little bit, and this week we're covering a subject that I think about a lot, and that's public speaking. Every candidate is going to have to, at some point, address a large group. The most common way that this happens for people who are running for your local elected office, that's your city councils, mayorals, county offices, water boards, school boards, is through community forums. And these forums can be friendly, held by groups that already back you, nonpartisan, held by groups like League of Women Voters, or they can be held by your local media. But no matter how these forums are put together, a lot of candidates live in fear of going and talking out loud. So this week in Nuts and Bolts, we gave a few hints of things that you should do before you go into these forums and the way to think about them. First, before you start any public speaking event, try and warm yourself up a little bit. Having done speech and debate for a big part of my life and spent a lot of time doing public speaking, it's one of the things that I can tell you is more important than people realize. Everyone thinks that they can just walk into a room and start speaking because it comes natural and not run into problems. They're gonna simply walk in at 8 a.m. in the morning and speak for an hour plus, being put on the spot to questions. They think that the most difficult thing that they're going to run into is having their mind come up with the answers. And that is definitely part of the equation. But the other part is making sure that you sound fluent and that you feel fluent. And just like any other set of muscles in your body, your mouth needs a little bit of exercise. So I tell people about a half an hour before you go in and do any speaking, do a little bit of vocal warm-ups. If you've done any public speaking in the past, or if you've come from a background in theater, you know a little bit about this. So some of the ones that I enjoy doing with others is to make sure that you stretch yourself out, and squinch yourself up, so that you get control a little bit, and then use a little bit of a tongue twister. I'm pretty frequent to go back to sit in solemn silence with a dull, dark dock in a pestilential prison with a lifelong lock, awaiting the sensation of a short, sharp shock from a cheap and chippy chopper on a big black block. Now there's a continuation of that, but you don't need to see me do vocal warm-ups all day. Doing vocal warm-ups can help make you feel better, a little bit more confident before you walk into a room. I can't tell you how many candidates or even elected officials walk in and find themselves tongue-tied. And one of the things I'll hear is that it wasn't a matter of they didn't have the words, they just couldn't get the words out, or they felt uncomfortable getting the words out. Along with that, make sure that you have water, and really just water, up on the dais with you to make sure that when you speak to the group, you have a way to keep yourself fluid so that you don't end up dry and feeling as though you can't answer. So once you've got some of the technicalities out of the way, let's talk a little bit about how you answer questions. One of the worst things to do in any of these forums is to find yourself reading a script. Too often we want to over-prepare. We will pre-write out long-winded answers to questions that we expect that we might have. And those answers end up with candidates or even elected officials, again, looking down at a piece of paper and reading. Well, that's not very effective. As a matter of communication, people like to see you look at them. They like to be able to look back at you with your eyes up, scanning the audience, not keeping a focus on any particular individual, but finding points throughout the room that you address so that people feel as though you're looking at the entire group. If you're constantly looking down, they don't get that association. Think about it. If you're in a conversation in your own personal life and the person that you're talking to is constantly looking down instead of looking at you, it's a pretty distracting conversation, isn't it? I mean, it probably can come off really uncomfortable for both sides. If instead of writing out huge, long-winded answers, you put down bullet points, it often gives yourself a chance to respond to other people in the room, to address other things that are said, and to still get across the key points that you want to address. Now, if you're really uncomfortable with what you're going to say, go ahead, work through some ideas earlier. Have a lot of different ways that you might think about it, but don't focus on writing down everything that you plan to say, because it looks to everyone involved as though you're out of touch with where the audience is. That's the most friendly way that I can put it. So that's something that I want you to keep in mind. If you've read through this diary, you also know that when you handle these functions, a lot of the people that you're addressing, the people who come to these, aren't undecided voters. Most of the people who come to a community forum in person are people who are hardened advocates of either your candidate or your opponent. It's not often you go to a community forum at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning or 8 o'clock at night on a Wednesday and you find the room packed with people who say to themselves, I don't know either of these people. I just decided to spend my evening or Saturday morning talking to politicians to see what they think. That's a very small part of the audience. So you have to remember those people in the audience, they're waiting for a reason to not only want to support you, but to find things that they can talk about that address your issues. So hit home on your key points so that when the advocates in the room who already endorse you talk about you to their friends in support of you, they know what you stand for, what you're running for, and that they feel that you're actually passionate about those issues. So, again, with public speaking, make sure that you're warmed up. Don't walk into a room cold. Don't write yourself out long-winded answers. Keep your head up so that you're talking to the audience, and try and feel a little bit comfortable by giving them some of the things that they need to go out and advocate for you as a candidate. Okay, next week on Nuts and Bolts, we're going to be back, but we're going to start transitioning here pretty soon as we get to the summer, and we're going to break out a second series of Nuts and Bolts that's going to be focused on how do we handle the governing. And also coming this fall, we're going to work on an advanced series of Nuts and Bolts that will start filling in with this to grow it to talk about much more difficult issues. All right, thank you very much. We'll see you throughout the year.